You had mentioned that some of Pope Francis's actions had at least were potentially stumbling blocks to union with Rome. Talk about that, because I imagine that's true of a lot of folks.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say too much, but there's real scandal, I think, caused by some of the actions and words that he said. But at the same time, I think people don't quite understand the teaching of the church on the fact that popes can err, just not when they're speaking ex cathedra or they're not binding the church to believe something. And so seeing that, for me, it was not really all that big of a problem once I recognized that. And I recognized that very early on. So it was a worry in the sense that if this is happening frequently and all the time throughout history, for example, if it's everywhere, right, that we just have these awful popes who just, I don't want to say happen to not err, right? This is looking at it as a Protestant, right? Looking at it from outside, like they just happen to not be wrong on Catholic doctrine when they're speaking in this in particular circumstance, right? That's maybe a general sign that the Catholic Church isn't true. That was kind of the objection that I would have, if I were to put it into words now, that was in my head, right? But that just really didn't really strike me as all that meaningful once I considered that Israel was God's chosen, prophetic nation, as it were, to preach the gospel to the nations through God's covenant with David, which makes it, an international, worldwide kingdom is the idea. That's just not a big concern. There's a ton of evil kings, right? And they could be wrong and all kinds of things. The question was really about the nature of the high priest, things like that in the Old Testament. Can he be wrong when declaring on an interpretation of the Pentateuch, things like that? I still don't know. I tend towards no, because there's that passage in John where Jesus talks about how you have to listen to what the Pharisees say, but don't do what they do, because they sit on the seat of Moses, right? So what does that mean? It seems to suggest that they have a kind of authority from God to interpret it, which would imply a kind of grace given with the authority to protect them from error in such a thing like that. And then in the other passages where the high priest prophesies, saying that Jesus would is it not better that one man should die on behalf of the people than that the whole nation should perish? And he doesn't know what he's saying, but he's saying something that the Holy Spirit takes to mean something entirely different, right? So there's kind of questions about authority.
Sure.
But I'd say we didn't take the normal approach of, is the papacy true, therefore everything else? It was kind of, if the papacy is true, we're going to see the truth of these other things, and then I'm not going to be able to prove historically or something like that, that this is necessarily the case. That it doesn't work that way with any dogma of the faith, right? Well, there's some dogmas we can know infallibly through reason, but most of them are above our reason. Not in the sense that they're not reasonable. It's just that they exceed human reason. Like the Trinity, we would never be able to arrive at the Trinity on the basis of reason alone, because when God creates, the Trinity works in unity. So if you think about this, we trace back all created effects. What are we going to get to? Is the unity of God, not the Trinity of God. How could we get there from created effects? We can't. We have to know that on the basis of divine revelation alone. And so recognizing things like that were very key to understanding that kind of relationship and how we should be kind of looking at it,
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe or you're a dingus. What's a dingus exactly?
Used to refer to something one cannot or does not wish to name specifically.
You don't have to subscribe, but if you did, I'd love it. You dingus.
Like the video. That's who we're using that one. Take one.